Welcome to another edition of the Batchelor News Radio Show on the Batchelor News Radio Network, WCOM in Chapel Hill, of course, WCLM in Richmond, Virginia, our affiliates, the Batchelor News .airtime.pro, and of course you can watch this as you're watching now, the rebroadcast of this on Big Mind Entertainment. I'm LA Batchelor. We thank you for joining us as always. You could be doing something else, but we appreciate you checking in. I want to bring in my guest. Always good to have him on from sportsawakening.com, touring the AFC South, the Nashville voice, and a partridge in a pear tree. He is Mike Patton. And Mike, always good to have you on, man. And I appreciate you coming on this evening on short notice.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be on.
So you know the news of the day. You're right there. Derrick Henry, who was on pace for not only another 2,000-yard year, but even more record-setting when you add that extra game. And Mike, and you want to talk about his injury and everything, but I'm so hurt for him and the team. I'm hurt for him because of what I said, what pace he was on, and showing he's an MVP. But you and I said, it doesn't go to running backs. We know, but just showing how dominating he is, right? To be that fast and freakish and that big, it's just amazing. And I'm not saying Tennessee can't win if he comes back, and you can get into that, but this is their year. Like, they beat everybody so far. Like, all the teams that they've been struggling with, and they go to the playoffs and under Vrabel and get there, and they lose to Kansas City, or they lose to Baltimore, or they lose to this and that. I mean, they've beaten Baltimore in the past. But they beat all those guys now, and Buffalo. This is their year, and it happens. So what do we know about the injury? Do we know how it happened, and how long will he be out?
Well, it happened in the first quarter this weekend against the Colts. He checked with the trainers checked with him. What he said is he felt fine to go back in. Of course, with Mike Vrabel, he's he definitely he's going to trust his player. So he Derek said he was good enough to go back in. He left the decision to him. Of course, he felt like he earned that decision to make that choice. Went back in, played the rest of the game. And after the game, said foot MRI. And then we got the news that heard around the world. And I don't think any Titans fan really thought a ton of it. But, however, if you watch the game after he came out and then came back in, you kind of noticed he walked a little bit differently, like he was not trying to put a whole bunch of pressure on that foot while he was walking. And that's when I knew I was like, something does not seem right. And sure enough, we have the news today. Of course, Mike Vrabel wouldn't put a timetable on it because he doesn't like putting timetables on injuries because, what if he gets to like 10 weeks and he's not back, and people are like, well, he's supposed to be back between 6 to 10 weeks, stuff like that. So that's the timetable reported that it's been 6 to 10 weeks is what the timetable is. He could come back the end of the season or the playoffs. That's what I think the goal is, more than likely, for Derrick Henry, probably in his mind. But of course, none of us know the exact time. He is going to be around the team after he has his surgery as soon as he can be. He wants to be around the team, be present, be on the sidelines, stuff like it. Whatever he can do to be around the team, he wants to be around the team. And it definitely was something that you could tell the mood around the city was just totally different today. A lot of people.
A couple of things. If it's 6 to 10, and knowing him and his work ethic, how hard he works, right? To be the best back. He is the best back in football, in my opinion. So, maybe he gets back in 7 weeks or 6 weeks. And then if he does, do they rest him to get to the playoffs, or do they use him to make sure they get a first round bye so then he's fresh and all of those things? First part. And then second question, you alluded to Vrabel and, Henry, earning the right to make that decision. Was there any question of why Vrabel didn't take him out? Is that something that's been kind of twirling around Tennessee right now?
Well, I'll get to your first question. The first question, as far as Derrick Henry, I mean, if you look at the second half of their season, they've got 3 games against the Houston Texans. Well, 2 games against the Houston Texans and 1 against the Jaguars. So it depends upon where they are. If he's able to come back, if they rest him into the playoffs, or if they let him go for a couple games to kind of get a little lather. That's totally dependent upon the positioning where they are. Of course, they have a big game next week. This Sunday against the L.A. Rams in L.A. with Von Miller supposed to be playing for them, which he got traded to the Rams today. So that's going to be huge. And as far as the decision from Mike Vrabel, somebody did ask him about that, and that's how it kind of got found out that he definitely was wanting to pull him from the game or thought of pulling him from the game, but he felt like Derek had deserved that right to make his call with that one. Sometimes you do have to protect the player from themselves, and other times you have to trust your player as well. I don't think it was an injury that he was going to do anything worse to by going out there because, of course, your adrenaline's going. But then again, there's always the flip side of why didn't he take him out? Why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? That as well.
And that's the question I have is that I'm just Monday evening quarterbacking, but you know, obviously Derrick Henry needs his feet for leverage and when he's running and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think? Again, it's hypothetical. I don't want to wish the worst, but if Henry doesn't come back the same, or they blank this year because of it, that Vrabel will not only get more criticism, but he could be on the hot seat.
Honestly, I don't think he'll be under the hot seat or get more criticism. To be honest, just the way it all broke down, the way the relationship that he and Derek have as head coach and your best player on the team is something that a lot of people probably don't see a lot of. But their relationship is pretty close. So I don't think it'll be something where it'll cause him to be fired if they lose a bunch of games. If they don't. But in my opinion, I don't think they'll lose a bunch of games. I think they'll actually be a little better than what people think they will be. They're going to be without Derek. A lot of people think their season's over. They're going to lose. They're not going to win any more games, things like that. But you also forget they have talent defensively. They do have other pieces that they can plug in. And I will say, with a few adjustments, they can still put up points.
And wait, I mean, they play in the AFC South.
Right.
They're going to win the division. They are. I mean, thanks to Carson Wentz and the coach yesterday, I think they sealed the division. It's a matter of how many games they win and the positioning they'll be in terms of a division. If they're going to have to play that first week or whatever the case may be, that's where all that kind of comes in. I'm with you. I think they'll be fine in the sense that they're going to make the playoffs. But my concern is, they lose that balance. Or, Mike, they get better because of it. They don't have to heavily rely on this great man that he is, and they figure out ways. And so now, coaches got to coach. Now you got to come up with some scheming and some game planning. Tannehill's got to be much better. The defense has got to be much better. A.J. Brown's got to be much better. Those guys got to step it up now because Derek's not there. Would you agree with that?
I would say this: A.J. Brown in the last couple of games has actually been playing very, very well.
No, I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying,
Okay.
with him being gone, stepping it up even more.
Yeah, well, definitely, I would say that. But of course, he's only missed 2 of his last He's only missed 2 targets and then when being 2 passes thrown to him. So I don't know how much more of a level AJ can take it to. With missing only 1 target in each game, and the balls that are thrown to him. But I will say it'll be more difficult. His catches will be. One thing also I will say is, Tannehill definitely has to step it up. I mean, this year he hasn't been quite as accurate. And
Right.
If you notice from the first year that he played for the Titans or was a starter for the Titans, his numbers have gone down just a little each year, but they were highly above normal the first year he stepped in to be the starting quarterback. Then they were a little bit above normal last year. Now they're about average to a little below average. I think he's taking a little bit too many chances sometimes, but I think with Derrick Henry being out, I think it's going to put a little bit more focus on him to be the leader out there. I think one thing you may see is the RPOs a little bit more with him because people forget he was actually a college wide receiver for half of his college career.
Right.
And then he switched to quarterback. So, he is an athlete. He can run. So I think you'll see a little bit more of that. And that'll probably be something they use to still get the action across the middle of the field with A.J. Brown, which basically he gets the majority of his yards running pass patterns across the middle of the field. So I think that'll be huge. Defensively, I think they're not doing bad defensively. I think they do have moments where or stretches where they do have, they have brain cramps, things like that. But I think guys like Harold Landry, who's second in the league in sacks, guys like Kevin Byard, who's having a very good season on the heels of a bad one, and a few other guys are definitely, definitely they have to step up their game and be leaders. And I think they can fill in the gaps right there for not having Derrick Henry. I think definitely if they win this game Sunday and don't have Derrick Henry, then a lot of people's eyes will be open a lot.
And we're talking with Mike Patton here on the Batchelor News Radio Show. Mike, this is a pass-driven league, as you know, as great, and I use that word with great as Derrick Henry is. Teams tend to go away from the running game. We've seen that in so many games, even this past Sunday, where, what was that about? Like, I thought the Colts, we'll get to that game, and I thought the Colts went away from the running game too soon in that game when they could have put Tennessee in a bad spot and won a game. But like I said, we'll break down that in a second. But do you think that Tennessee didn't utilize enough of going away from the passing game that it puts them back a little bit behind the eight ball to now? I mean, obviously, you still got to run the football. I mean, you got to keep a defense honest. And with the Rams, you better, because you got to keep them dogs off Tannehill. They coming. You want to stay out of third and long. You know that. So
Right.
Do you think they didn't utilize more of the passing game and utilizing, Derrick Henry as, okay, there he is. You got to put 8 in the box. But you go play action. Have they not done enough of that where now doing it now is going to be more predictable for them offensively?
I would say they actually over the last few weeks have, last 4 or 5 weeks have actually started to mix it up a little bit more to where the play action has been helpful for them. The player most evident, the barometer that shows that is A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown, when he's catching passes across the middle, which is majority of them are, it's always off of play action to Derrick Henry or running back. And that's how he's so wide open across the middle. So that's the barometer if they're kind of mixing it up enough to me. That aspect of it. So, the more they're able to mix it up with that, and they'll continue to be able to do that with guys like Jeremy McNichols and, of course, the newly acquired Adrian Peterson, then I think they'll be able to, continue to do the play action. I think they've done a good mixture. And Todd Downey, for as bad as he was the first game when they played against Arizona, he's gotten a lot better in kind of mixing up his play calls and keeping teams off balance with what they want to do. Of course, some of the plays don't work quite as well as you would like them to, but he's done a good job of trying things and mixing things up and actually doing a good job of plugging and playing when it comes to wide receivers, because we all know Julio Jones has not been out there every game. So he's mixing and matching a lot with receivers, and he's also manufacturing ways for wide receivers to get open. I don't know if you've caught, but they'll do like a trip set and like one receiver on the other side. And what they'll do is run rub routes to get guys open that are not necessarily quick guys or fast guys like Josh Reynolds and Nick Akina, I believe, from Westbrook Akina. Those guys get open because they use rub routes to get them open. So I'll say they've used the pass game. They've mixed it up quite enough actually to throw teams off. It's just teams are going to put 8 in the box regardless. But, now I wonder if it changes teams' perspective because the Titans are still going to run the football no matter who's back there. I just wonder, are they going to put 7 people in the box now because Derrick Henry's not there, or are they going to continue to put people in the box because the Titans are a running team? I wonder. That's what I wanted to see when it comes up on Sunday.
And I think, I mean, clearly they're going to see more blitzes, especially in third and long. You're going to see a lot
Right.
more of that. But we'll see. Adrian Peterson, I was telling my sons about it, and they laugh. And, I'm like, well, he played, I think, in 2020 last. And, he's a Hall of Famer, of course. How much can he help this team?
I'll say this: there's been a lot of positive reaction about him, a lot of negative reaction about him. Positive reaction: oh, he's a third leading rusher all the time. He can do this, he can do that, he can do those things. The negative reaction: he's 36 years old. What can he really give? But the thing is, he's not going to be counted on to be the full-time back. Those days for him are over. I think it's more going to be a running back by committee, and they're going to be counting on him to maybe give them maybe 10 to 12 rushes, potentially 10 to 12 rushes at max to, kind of spell Jeremy McNichols, because I think this is Jeremy McNichols' show. As the backup running back, I think he'll jump into that role. And he's actually not been bad running the football, because what he does also that Henry does is makes one cut, he gets through there. And he's a little smaller, of course, obviously, but he's quicker through the hole, and he's not necessarily a light guy in terms of what he weighs. So,
And
it'll be interesting to
so
see.
with him, they definitely always with him they can bring him down, they bring him in on passing plays. You see what he can do in the passing game. But I almost see Adrian Peterson like Marcus Allen. Like is you're in the red zone, here he comes. He can do some things. He knows how to get to the end zone. Um, so I see him like that, and I do see him in the way, like you said, maybe 10 or 15 touches on the ground, and they mix it up. But you hit it on the head. They still have to run the football. There's no way that offense can flourish if they just go, okay, no Adrian Peterson. Now we got to put it all on Tannehill, because that's not going to fly. He's
That
not that kind of guy.
that's
He
gonna
can
make
make
him that's
plays.
gonna make him look like Carson Wentz looked like in the fourth quarter.
Speaking of which, we talked about this Colts team. You talked about this Colts team. Like, hey, man, they won these games. And in Tennessee, it's a big matchup. You said, hey, if they can get this game against Tennessee, now we're looking at something different. And then we're right there. And see, Frank Reich falls into this Doug Peterson thing where he wants to get fancy. You running the ball successfully, and even if you're not, that's your balance. That's why Carson looked a lot better, on top of the fact that he was making smarter decisions. And as someone said on TV, instead of being Superman, he was just being Clark Kent. Just get it done. But no, he wants to revert back and take that shot. And, part of it, I think, is Frank Reich in the play calling. But part of it is Carson Wentz is always going to be that guy. He's always going to think that he's more athletic enough and can throw it through a steel wall or whatever and get it to his receiver and make the play. And they can't win like that. So are the Colts that far behind that they don't make the playoffs at all?
Oh, they're falling dangerously behind to where
I mean, 3-5, right? 3-5.
they're dangerously close. Now I will say the second half of their schedule is pretty light on them. So they could, make a run and get to the playoffs. But definitely they're not helping themselves. The craziest thing about it was the throw he made in overtime to throw the interception wasn't the worst throw of the day. That wasn't the worst throw of the day. Now, I'll say this. Kevin Byard actually baited him into that throw. But if he'd have been looking in the middle of the field, he had Pascal. But see, the thing is, Byard knew where he was going. He knew what he was going to do, and he baited him into the throw, and that's why he picked it off. But the
And
worst
he had
throw of
the
the
running
game.
back. If I'm not mistaken, when I remember that play, I thought he had his running back that he could have dumped down in the flat that could have ran at least
He had
get
two
field
people.
goal range.
He had two people. He had Pascal right across the middle of the field too, because what it was Byard was splitting two wide receivers, and they had Pascal running a post pattern across the middle, and they had the other guy running the out pattern, and of course he went with the out pattern, or not an out pattern. He went with the guy that was on the outside instead of Pascal, which Pascal would have probably been open. And the other play I was talking about was when he was getting in the end zone, instead of taking the 2 points or getting tackled at the 1 yard line, he throws the ball up for grabs. Rookie Elijah Molden just jumps up, takes it from a offensive lineman, and he's basically right there in the end zone at that point. To me, you just take that sack and you eat it. You don't give the ball up. You don't throw it up for grabs just to anywhere. And that's the part of the gunslinger that we hadn't been seeing from Carson Wentz for a good majority since the first couple games. But this game, you like someone always said, even though like Teddy Bruschi, Teddy Bruschi said this. Even though Carson Wentz has been playing good, I'm still preaching in this defensive locker room. He's gonna make that mistake that we need to take advantage. Look for that fumble, look for that gunslinger throw or anything like that. So that way we can make a play. And sure enough, he not only did it once, but he did it twice. And the Titans made him pay both times.
Yeah, that's the problem with this guy. He's always taking chances like that, and you see the good in him. He's playing in the flow of the game. He's taking what the defense gives him. He's dumping it down in the flat when it needs to, or taking whatever, and then he wants to think I got to make this play, or otherwise we lose, and he doesn't make the play, and they still lose. So it'll be interesting to see. Jacksonville, as we go through the AFC South, loses yet again. Yet again, doesn't look good. Are we just counting the days with Urban Weiner, I call him, Urban Weiner, to be going back to college football or sitting out a year after 1 year with Jacksonville?
We might be. I mean, from what I'm hearing, it wasn't necessarily the most enthused effort out there. It looked like they were still on the bye weekend to some people. It just, to me, there's a Seattle team that has issues already, but you made them look like they were the old Seattle teams with Marshawn Lynch and Michael Bennett and those guys up front, and KJ Wright playing linebacker, and then the Legion Boom back there. It just didn't look good, and there's just no way to explain how bad they looked. It looked awful, and I don't know if it gets better before it gets worse, to be honest. I thought at this point, at least, this team would look a little better, but when they looked a little better before the bye week, then they come back and put this out there. Now they just took 2 steps back, and I don't know if it gets any better. I don't know if the 2 main college jobs they're talking about are USC and LSU, and I don't see him landing either one of those jobs. So they might be stuck with him, or he might be going back to the Fox booth.
Right, or something along those lines. And it's funny because guys, if you don't have the locker room or you lose the locker room, then it's probably time to go. And like I said, he's in his first year, so it's probably going to happen. Speaking of going, doesn't seem like Deshaun Watson's going anywhere with this Houston team. They have a lot of nice parts that people can go and pick, before the trade deadline, but doesn't look like he's going. So what's the scenario that happens with him? He will never play for this team. So how do you think it plays out, and who do you think would be the best fit for him?
Honestly, the best fit for him right now is going to be sitting down on his couch, to be honest. But the best fit probably, if all the scenarios weren't there that are out there, obviously probably would have been a Philadelphia or a Carolina. That probably would have been a better fit for him at this point. I don't think he goes anywhere until these cases, because literally Miami had a deal in place, but I don't think that deal would have happened just based off the things I've kind of looked at and read. I don't think that deal would have happened because the court cases are still out there. The civil and the criminal complaints are still out there. And what if you trade for him, and then the commissioner decides, oh, we're going to put him on the exempt list? And the reason why I don't think he's actually been suspended or put on the exempt list so far is because he doesn't want to play for Houston. So he's not going to play. He's going to suspend himself in essence, and they're still paying him. So there we go. So that's why I don't think he's on the exempt list yet. I think if he gets traded, he'll more than likely land on the exempt list. Magically will land on the exempt list. So, I mean, honestly, those cases are going to keep him in Houston.
Mm. Did get an email from someone that talked about the Titans running situation. They said, ask Mike, why don't the Titans trade for a guy like Tony Pollard in Dallas or James Robinson out of Jacksonville?
Well, I'll say you this. The Jacksonville Jaguars will not trade James Robinson. That's not going to happen. He's their only bright light, to be honest. I mean, he just escaped injury himself this weekend with the foot of his own. So I don't think they'll trade him. It's obvious he's not the future of that team because, of course, they went out and drafted a running back in the first round. However, I don't see them trading him within the division. So that trade probably is not going to happen. As far as Tony Pollard, probably be a little bit too rich for the Titans to try to get that, get him. If anything, I would look for the Titans to get maybe a lower tier guy. If they do, go get someone that may be familiar with the scheme. One guy to think on that I just thought about. I don't know if it'll happen or not. So you can say you heard it here first, or you can say I'm crazy. But a guy that played for them a year or two ago that was actually in the Atlanta Falcons camp was Deontay Foreman, who was a former Houston Texan. They picked him up. Now he's playing for I think he's playing for the Atlanta Falcons, if not on the practice squad or not there. One of the two, one of the three. But anyway, that's a guy that's familiar with their system, familiar with how things go, and would fit right in with the Titans. So that would be the only thing I would think would happen. I don't see them trading for a big time back at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the Saints situation, which let's go there. James Winston goes down. A lot of people have Cam going there, or he should go there, and all that. But I do believe that Sean Payton, whether it be stubborn or he thinks he's a genius or whatever the case may be, will probably just stay with the three he got in camp right now, which is Taysom Hill or Simeon being the starter, whichever, or they flip flopping like they did with Jameis, where Taysom comes in and does his thing with his running and all the trickeries and stuff. And then you got the kid from Notre Dame as your third string. I could see Sean Payton looking at his defense, looking at their schedule, and they still have teams like the Bills and Cowboys, and they play the Bucs again. Carolina might be a tough out as well. But other than that, of course, I do believe, don't they play Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So, I mean, they still got about 4 tough games on their schedule. But I can see him staying. The defense is playing well all year, and we're beating the teams we're supposed to beat, and we'll just stay where we are and go with Simeon and Hill with the rookie as the third string. What's your thoughts on what they will do and what they should do?
Well, honestly, I don't think Cam would be a good fit for this team because they do pass the ball a lot, and they don't necessarily do a lot of things. They have a lot of things that Taysom Hill does, but it's not something that's within that. To me, it's not something that's within the flow of their offense. To me, it breaks up their offense, to be honest, when they bring Taysom Hill in and then throw him at quarterback and all those type of things. And they only you need to use that near the goal line anyway, or in short yardage situations. That's just my thinking. But, I don't think Cam would actually fit for that offense. I think he fit more in Seattle, to be honest. However, I do think he stays with the quarterbacks that he does have. I think Simeon will more than likely be the starter. He does have He does have M. Book, there. And then, of course, Taysom Hill. And I think Taysom Hill continues to be the utility guy. Simeon, the starter. And then M. Book is the backup. And if anything happens to Simeon, I think it's M. Book's show. And they go from there, to be honest.
Well, they better hope they don't want Ian Book to be the starter going into the playoffs or whatever. But I agree with you. I think I I think Cam can be a fit because of the way they pass. Because you saw what they did in New England, where he wasn't really going down the field. But I mean, that's New England style as well. Um, I just don't. I just think that Sean is comfortable where he is with his system, with his defense. He gets Ingram back. They probably make some more moves. So I think he's comfortable in that situation. Von Miller going
Right.
to those Rams you mentioned, and wow, like I mean, it's Christmas in LA right now. I mean, the gifts that keep on giving. You already got a pretty solid defense, although they have been as lights out as last year, but there's certainly still a formidable defense. Just ask Tampa and some of these other teams, and then they bring in a guy who's really he's been fighting injuries, and between him and Chubb, they've been not on the same page and stuff, and he goes. It's emotional. I saw the interview. But what does he bring to that Rams team and that defense that makes them even better?
Well, what he's going to do is bring a guy that gets attention. By that I mean, of course, you're going to bring another blocker over there. You're going to chip block. Of course, that goes along with Aaron Donald being right in the middle, which means a certain Leonard Floyd is going to get more one-on-one matchups, which means that's not good. You can put him on the backside of your defense in terms of Leonard Floyd and match him up against the lesser of the two tackles that you have, and he can wreck shop. He'll be literally at the front of the quarterback, the right where the quarterback's vision is, and that's dangerous. And then also that just makes their defense even better, makes Aaron Donald even better because you have to pick your poison. So it just to me, their defense is going to be definitely bringing a lot of pressure, in my opinion. And I mean, their defensive backs, it takes a lot of pressure off of them because they lost two of them this offseason to Cleveland. So that's kind of a little bit of where you've seen a little bit of the difference in the
Yeah, they're
Rams.
good. Right.
And, that's going to take a little bit more pressure off of them. I mean, Ramsey's going to be Ramsey. But you have the other guys out there that are still trying to, learn their things. And they're trying to get up to the level of the two guys that left, and they're not quite there yet.
Before I go to Tony, T Mac McClean, sure has questions. Who's a team or teams that you look at both in AFC and NFC that are legitimate, contenders that need to add that one player, that one position, offensive, defense, to make that run? AFC and NFC or both?
That's a good question. Honestly, I could see the Saints adding Deshaun Jackson, and that could add a lot of explosiveness to their offense because right now it seems like they don't have a boatload of it. So
Well, you don't want to throw the ball down the field. Like I don't.
I
I
think
know
they're
Michael
going to take
Thomas is a possession guy, so even when he
right,
comes back, you're not looking for him to do out
right,
routes, deep routes,
right,
or something. But
right.
they don't want to throw the ball down the field. That's not their thing.
I think they do and they don't, but they have a certain amount of shots they want to take a game. And with Marquez Callaway, they haven't quite done that. I just don't understand why. So I think you throw in a Deshaun Jackson in there, and I think he can kind of back off defenses. But the thing is, you're going to get some deep shots in there, but you're also going to make defenses back up, which means more room for the running game, Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. So honestly, it works twofold. So that's why I would say, potentially there, that would be a move. And as far as the AFC, I mean, let's see. Well, I'm going to count the Chiefs in this one, and I'm going to say Melvin Ingram. Go get Melvin Ingram from the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's not happy there. He wants to be traded.
Right.
Bring him to the Chiefs. He starts. He brings pressure, and he stops the run. He does things better than Frank Clark does. Frank Clark's the invisible man right now in that defense, and he's getting paid to be the $6 million man. So right. I would say that, he bringing Melvin Ingram from Pittsburgh to Kansas City would be a great move for Kansas City, and at least give them some semblance of defense that isn't as torn through as one-ply piece of paper, one-ply tissue paper, I would say.
Yeah, they just seem schematically. They just don't seem like they know where they need to be.
Biggest biggest mistake they made this offseason, trying to put Chris Jones at defensive end. He's
Right
not a
now, they
defensive
moved
end.
them. They sliding them back inside now.
They
Um,
should he should have never left there to begin with. Horrible
I
move.
don't. And they slide him at the end. They're gonna have to pay him a ton of money anyway. If he comes
They
off the
just
bench.
paid him.
Right. So
Mhm.
I don't understand that. And between Honey Badger and they just seem to be out of place. Like they just don't seem to be communicating right. On top of the fact that they miss a lot of tackles too, um, with that. But you're right. With Highsmith and those guys healthy now, Melvin is the odd man out. He deserves to go play somewhere. He's a starter. He's a legitimate starter anywhere on anybody's team. So I agree with that. Maybe Pittsburgh gets some good picks out of it with him. Talking with Mike Patton here on the Bastard News radio show on Big Mind Entertainment, StreamYard, and of course the BastardNews.airtime.pro. Don't forget the rebroadcast. You can see them there and hear it at our website. And with that, I go to my good friend Tony T. Mac McClean.
Uh, I'm guessing you guys have probably already talked about this, but is Henry's definitely out for the season, or are they looking to him to come back late?
Not out for the season. They haven't actually declared he's out for the season. They're basically Mike Vrabel did not put a timeline on him coming back because he doesn't like to put timelines on injuries for players. So the door is open for him to come back. Looking at it, they're probably going to say towards the end of the season or the playoffs would be the best projection right now.
Yeah, that's him doing his Belichick impersonation of not telling anybody anything. So
Well, now he doesn't. Well, the reason why he doesn't do that is because he doesn't want to put pressure on players to think they got to be back at this certain amount and they mess around and re-injure themselves again. So that's why he does that kind of more out of the respect to the player as opposed to being like Belichick.
mm. Also, we saw they got Adrian Peterson. We saw Miller go to the Rams. Now I saw a report earlier that Houston, again, you got to be careful during this time of the year because there's more lies than whatever going on. But now they're saying they're going to keep Watson now. So what's the deal there?
Well, they can't trade him anywhere anyway. His market was pretty limited, and then plus you still have those looming civil and criminal cases. Because if he gets traded, more than likely he lands on the exempt list. So I didn't see him going anywhere anyway. I heard everyone talking about it and things like that, but I kept trying to tell people as long as those civil and criminal cases are out there, he's in Houston sitting at home.
Mm-hmm. And basketball wise, I know it's early. It's very, 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 very early. But do we take the Wizards seriously yet, or do we need a couple more weeks to sort of digest what's going on down in DC?
I take the Wizards more seriously than I did last year. Here's why I say that. They've got a defender now on the wing that can come in KCP. They've got a guy that's actually a double-double machine in Kyle Kuzma, which a lot of people talk about him and talk bad about him. But when I said when he got traded to the Wizards, he would probably have a career year. Look at him now. So I think he'll continue to do that and continue all to do the dirty work and the things that need to be done. Montrezl Harrell, he's starting right now, but he'll be coming in off the bench to give them that offense off the bench. And they just have more depth and more of a focus as a team this year with Wes Unseld. He's getting more out of that team than Scott Brooks did. And I really am enjoying seeing what he's doing with that team, with that talent. And it's not all on Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal, the one difference I can say that I have seen that is just easily sticking out, Bradley Beal does not have to be the man every night, throw up 30, 40 points for them to win. They've got Dinwiddie. They've got Kuzma. I mean, they've got other guys. Montrezl Harrell has been playing well starting in the starting lineup. Of course, we know defensively he can't stop anybody. But, but they've got more weapons. They got more versatility. And they seem like they just have a more grit this year. And the focus is a lot different for that team.
You mentioned Scott Brooks. And the first thing that came into my mind and bear with me for a bit. Larry Brown, back in the day was a point guard back in the day, and he was always hard on his point guards. You think maybe with Brooks being a former point guard himself in the league, you think he might have been a little too hard on Beal, and now that the reins have been sort of taken off, that's why you're seeing him blossom a little bit more?
No, that Scott Brooks has a reputation for being more of the coddling type than he does actually the guy that's going to be hard on his players. So honestly, that's why I know people. I'm not here to bash Russell Westbrook. I love watching him play and the passion he plays with. But I will say this: probably some of the bad habits that Russell has is because Scott Brooks didn't curtail some of those when he was in Oklahoma City. And I would say that that's the reason why. And then plus his offenses are very unimaginable. They're very one-on-one offense as opposed to moving the basketball, back cuts, screens, anything like that to get people open. So that's why I think he's failed more with point guards because he creates a hodgepodge of offense, in my opinion, because it's more one-on-one basketball than it is actual offense, which that's scary because he was an actual point guard in the NBA that was putting up assists and shooting. It kind of blows my mind that he couldn't create a better offense with that, being that he was a former NBA point guard.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Mike, I want to stay with the association and look at some teams that Tony hit it on the head with the Wizards playing well, Golden State off to a great start, Utah off to a great start. The Lakers coming back around. So, I mean, one team that people are not really talking about, or two teams for me, and I'll stay in the East, and that's the Miami Heat and the Chicago Bulls. Now, the Knicks, I've been on the Knicks. I'm telling you, I think the Knicks are going to have a special year. They've already won some big games on the road. So for me, I'm not really surprised at what they're doing so far. But I think that people are sleeping on the Heat. They've always been there. I slept on Eric Spoelstra as a premier coach. He definitely is. That team is tough. They got a finisher. And then when you look at the Bulls with their talent, I think the only problem with the Bulls is who is the closer. You're the foreign kid. You got Levine, and then and of course DeRozan. I mean, who is the closer there? That's a good thing they got to figure out. But I think the Bulls and the Heat are in the East at least are really flying to me under the radar.
Well, I think they definitely are. Well, the Bulls got a problem on their hands just because their power forward Patrick Williams is out for the year with a wrist injury, dislocated his wrist against the New York Knicks. So he's out for the season. So that's their biggest issue, is to find somebody at the power forward spot. Other than that, they've been playing small ball a lot and putting Vucevic out there with DeRozan and Caruso and Lonzo Ball and Levine, which pretty small lineup. So, but they're scrappy. They do play hard. They just got to figure things out on the defensive end. Offensively, they can put up points. Defensively, they've got to figure things out a little bit more there because you've got Vucevic, who's not necessarily known as a defensive player. Zach LaVine's not necessarily known as a defensive guy. DeRozan, he's pretty solid, but I wouldn't say he's great defensively. Lonzo Ball, he's a scrappy defender. That's what you have in your starting lineup a lot. So, that's a thing that they have to work on. I will say Jamonte Green, who the Bulls picked up from the Celtics and nobody really talked about it this offseason, he's been very good for them, either off the bench and now starting. So as far as the Heat just got tougher. That's what I thought. I mean, they replaced Dragic, which Dragic was cool, but he wasn't a guy that brings that grit and that grime when you're out there playing like a Miami Heat team that under Pat Riley you're used to seeing. He does that, and PJ Tucker does that as well. They're defensively better. They're defensively tougher. And Bam, Jimmy have stepped up this year, along with Tyler Hero, flashing back the clock to the pandemic championship series.
Yeah, and then you look out west. I don't know if Phoenix again. this is all in a small microscope, scope, like T Mac said. But it feels like Phoenix has this hangover. I don't know what's. They just have been very inconsistent, not just in not wins and losses, but just in their play or playing their type of game. Talk about them, and in Portland, Portland's a scary situation because you have a first year coach that seems to, he's one of those guys that won a championship and he's used to winning and a style of play and effort and all that. And he keeps using words like no effort. And, you're already dealing with a Damian Lillard who, everybody thinks next year he's going to be with the Knicks or whatever the case may be. But Chauncey Billups, does he need to kind of walk on eggshells a little bit, if you will, with Lillard in particular, because they're 500 and they've really been kind of hit or miss. So talk about Phoenix and the Portland situation.
As far as Phoenix, I mean, honestly, I think DeAndre Ayton, I think something's hanging over his head, and that's not getting that extension. So they're not necessarily getting the same play out of him. They're not necessarily getting the same consistent play out of just the perimeter guys. I think Mikal Bridges is still playing with the same effort and intensity. That's why they gave him an extension. But that's a few things that they're missing. I'm not seeing the same kind of enthusiasm and spark off the bench consistently either. That's another thing they're missing too. So I think they need to continue to strengthen the bench. Landry Shamet has to still get comfortable coming off their bench. I mean, he's on what is let's see, he played for the Nets last year, and now he's playing for the Lakers. I mean, originally he was drafted by the 76ers, then he got no, it's the Clippers, I'm sorry. He's played for the Philadelphia 76ers, got traded to the Clippers, then got traded to the Nets. Now he got traded to Phoenix. So it's going to take him a while to get comfortable. I mean, he's in his fourth different place in 4 seasons? I mean, I would be a little nervous as well, or trying to figure it out as well. But that's the biggest thing with them. I think they'll get going a little bit more as time goes on during the season. However, the West is a little tougher this year as well. As far as Portland, I'll say Portland's got a bunch of pieces that just aren't conducive to winning to me. I mean, you bring in Zeller from Charlotte. You bring in Ben McLemore from the Lakers, who he really wasn't on the team until injury happened. I mean, it just, to me, it just doesn't seem like that team is put together to win, period. And then you're asking two guards that are kind of both, Dame is not a huge guy, and CJ McCollum is not a huge guy either. He's like 6'3". Both of them have never been known as being defenders. So now you're going to tell me that both of them are going to become defenders all of a sudden? Nah, that's just not going to happen overnight. So, Covington's got to be a better defender. I mean, he is a solid defender, but he's got to continue to be even better. But that's putting a lot on him when you have two guys that are your starting guards that are not necessarily solid defensively. So that's the biggest issue they have. Effort, things like that. He's probably talking that up, and his team probably knows about him talking that up. Would I worry about Dame Lillard? I mean, I think Dame would pretty much let us know if he wanted to be traded or be gone at this point. And if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. There's nothing you can really do about it as a coach. You can just continue to try to put your imprint on the team. Unfortunately, you might end up with just CJ being your lone guard as a star. So
right. Well, bump the Knicks. Go to Philly. We've been playing okay, obviously, but come to Philly. Incidentally, I got someone lives in Carolina say, hey man, what about giving love for Charlotte? And the ball kid is nice, and I think Charlotte is, they're gonna fade eventually, and they'll be.
I'll say this about Charlotte.
Yeah.
Ball's playing well. Bridges is playing very well.
Right.
But the biggest thing is you still have the inconsistencies from Gordon Hayward. That's going to hurt them all year long.
Boy, he just kind of fell off. That injury, he's never been the same. He's never been the same.
He'll continue to be that same inconsistent guy the entire season. If they want to take it to the next level, he's got to be more consistent. If he's more consistent, they'll be a better team. But if he's not, then I guess they just paid him all that money for inconsistency.
And then Memphis, being a team in your area, dear. I mean, we talked about Moran, and I
Mhm.
mean, God, that dude, he is just dynamic. I mean, super. But does he have enough pieces around him for them to be consistent to get to the playoffs and make sort of an Atlanta run?
I think they have enough pieces. Do I think they'll make an Atlanta run? No, because the Atlanta run, a lot of people forget there was also injuries that go in along with that as well. So, that'll be something to also watch. I don't think the Grizzlies will have that many injuries they'll have to be able to, not deal with going forward. So, I think they'll be solid. I think they have the pieces. Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant are actually the key pieces. Then you have, Dylan Brooks, who hasn't played yet. I think he has a finger issue. That's a guy that they're missing that's actually a great two-way player for them. And he's about 6'6", 6'7", playing shooting guard. Right now, what they got is Desmond Bain playing shooting guard and small. I think shooting guard or small forward, one of the two. But anyway, he's spreading the floor for John Morant. Once they get Brooks in there with Bain and then all their pieces in there, I think then you will see them kind of make a little bit more of a jump. Do I think it'll be enough for them to go into the second round of playoffs this year? No, not yet. I give them one more year, then they'll be there. I think they're missing. I think they're putting Jaren Jackson Jr. a lot. Sometimes they're moving Steven Adams. They've got him there, but then they're moving Jaren Jackson to the center spot sometimes too. And I don't think that's a good move. And then
That's a
also,
horrible move.
I don't think Steven Adams is the right big guy for them anyway. Because to me, what I would have done, I would have kept Jonas Valanciunas because if when the game slows down, you can throw it into him and he can get buckets. And he wasn't hurting them last year. Now
Right.
you've got Steven Adams. He doesn't require the basketball, but he also is not a guy you can say, "Hey, give me a bucket down low" either.
Right.
So I think
Right.
that was a bad trade for them, in my opinion. But they still have enough to maybe put a scare into somebody or make the second round, but not making a finals run, not yet.
Yeah, Big V would have gave him some points and rebounds, like you said, and Steven Adams more of a guy who's gonna eat up some fouls and rebound and give you some toughness here and there. And they need some, like you said, if they dip it inside, you need a guy who can be able to get a shot inside. Steven Adams is definitely not that guy. Two other things, questions that came in from the NBA, and my son's a Golden State Warrior team. How good can that team be when they get Wiseman back, when they get Clay back, and they got another kid that's a biggie that is supposed to be coming, and the name escapes me.
It's about the high school kid from the G League.
That's how good can Trey Young and James Harden be with these new rule changes? You can't do that flopping. You can't push yourself in and the pump fakes and all that stuff. They're calling all of that stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
How much will that affect them?
Well, we saw the effect of James Harden. James Harden was kind of still trying to do a little bit of that stuff, and they didn't call it. So I think he's kind of slowly making the adjustment. He's going to have to attack the rim a little bit more. He's going to actually have to concentrate to make the shot instead of trying to rope the ref into getting a foul call.
And stay
I'm not saying I'm not.
and lay off them cold cuts too. By the way, I mean,
I will say this though:
what's
he's not
going on?
necessarily in horrible shape. If
That's
looking
what
at
I'm
him, he's not necessarily in horrible shape. I mean, that's just the shape he's always been in, and that's just who he is. He's not in the bad shape he was in Houston before he was trying to get traded. No. But I will say that he'll continue. He'll get himself together. I don't doubt he will. They just miss Kyrie because Kyrie was the scoring guy, and that allowed Harden to get triple doubles and kind of shoot it with a little bit more ease as opposed to being the second weapon on this team. But but of course, Kyrie coming back, that's a whole nother subject for a whole nother day. As far as Golden State, I think Golden State's shooting the basketball well. Jordan Poole's having a little bit of a slump. I thought he would break out a little more, but other than that, they're playing well. They're a deep team, and they still haven't got Clay back yet or Wiseman, which that'll be interesting to see how they integrate him into this offense because he definitely can do some things offensively and defensively for you to help you win. I just don't know if they're going to put him back in the starting lineup or just bring him in off the bench. we'll see what happens. But the one thing I always worry about, and they proved me wrong when they won the title. I said you live by the jumper. My dad always told me you live by the jumper, you die by the jumper. But they lived by the jumper all the way to a championship. So that's the one thing I always worry about them, the cold spells, and if that's going to cost them games.
Yeah, but they're definitely. I mean, that's what they're going to do, and I give credit to Steve Kerr. They're going to try to shoot their way to a championship. That's you already know that's what they're going to try to do. And like you said, they get a cold spell at the wrong time. You know how defenses play in the playoffs. There's a lot of half court, so that defense tightens up. They're gonna have to and continue to play good defense. I think they play solid defense as well. But it'll be interesting when he comes back. Real quick before you go, we didn't get a chance to talk top 25 and in college football. Big ups to the Tennessee State and doing what they're doing. I asked you about Georgia. Are they the best team? You said certainly their fan base does believe it, and I believe you said they are. But we go back to this same conversation, this debate, when it comes to the big fish in the little pond. These Cincinnati Bearcats, Wake Forest here in Carolina is playing well. They're undefeated, 8-0 for the first time in their program's history. Michigan State with a big win. Ohio State's still there, so on and so forth. Oklahoma, and Alabama off. But what is your criteria specifically when it comes to a team like Cincinnati playing the kind of competition they play? And I'll ask T this a little bit later. But, they're undefeated, like they are, and if they're number 2, if they don't lose, there's no way I'm moving them out of my college playoff series. If they win out, I don't care if they play in the Mutual Wild Kingdom team. If they're beating who's on their schedule and they didn't lose, and teams are losing up and down around them, Mike, why would they move? What's your criteria when it comes to the smaller schools playing, quote-unquote, lesser competition?
The biggest thing I think of is they don't make the schedule. They can only play the people on it. So, Cincinnati, of course, people talk about they didn't win impressively. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. But did they win? They did. So you can't necessarily bump them down if they lost, if they won by not an impressive margin, in my opinion, and put some one-loss team ahead of them and say, hey, it's okay. It just doesn't, that doesn't work for me. So as long as they continue to win, I don't think they lose any clout or any positioning right now at all, to be honest. That's just my thinking. Of course, there's going to be a lot of people that say, no, they should lose because of this, because of their schedule. But look, they can only play the games that are on there. They can't all of a sudden change the schedule and then put this person, that person, the other. You can't punish the school for being good against the competition they face. You can only be mad at the people that voted on it to put them there. But, honestly, can you really put an undefeated team that was already there to start the season and then be mad at them and start moving them back because you felt like you made a mistake? That'd be pretty terrible to look at. And yeah, that wouldn't go over very well.
And, Mike, you not only cover AFC South, but certainly you cover the SEC. And it's this push all the time every year to make sure they get 3 or 4 teams in the playoffs and one in the national championship game. At some point, if the system's not going to change, if it's about the Southeastern Conference TV network, meaning they want to get those guys in all the time, what are the other programs going to have to do to push back on that?
Just win. Honestly, if you look at a lot of the teams that are in the SEC or anything like that, looking at the strength of schedule for a lot of the teams, you'll probably say that a lot of them will end up in there, but just because of the strength of the SEC in general. Georgia, they're right there. I think Alabama comes close this year. mean, we'll see. But I honestly, if they lose a second time and they play Georgia and lose a second time, they're not going anywhere. But I'll say this: if Alabama goes to the SEC title game and they beat Georgia, then there's definitely a case for both of those teams to go there. I hate to say it, but it just it's kind of just the way it kind of plays out. I'm not trying to show any favoritism at all towards the SEC. But when you do beat the number one team and you have one loss yourself, unfortunately, that's kind of the way it kind of pans out a lot of times, unfortunately.
Yeah, but the only thing is that
Mhm.
they're number 1 and 2, and you're saying they deserve, in my opinion, because they're already up there in the first place. Start the season, they in the top 5. And so if you in the top 5 and you beating up on Missouri, and Vanderbilt can never have a program, and teams like that, and we see in Kentucky they had a hiccup, so now they fall, and Georgia wins that division there. So if you're gonna keep putting 5 SEC teams in the top 7, then when they beat each other, they still rank high. You know what I mean? Like it's already
I
set
got you.
that way.
Well, I understand that, and I also understand that if you look at it, the SEC didn't have quite as many teams as they did have in the top 25 this year. I think Big Ten actually had more teams, so you could also say the same thing about the Big Ten as well, in a sense.
That's fair enough. And speaking of that, the final question for you: you look at Jim Harbaugh again, riding high, and his record. Everybody talks about his record against Ohio State. He doesn't always beat Michigan State, as just like this year. So, does he need to beat Ohio State this year to keep his job? Considering, especially, he lost to Michigan State yet again.
I don't think he needs to beat Ohio State to keep his job. I think
Wow.
honestly, looking at the team this year, if they were if they ever go into that game with like 2 or 3 losses and played against Michigan State, I would say yes, he would have to beat Ohio State to win, but to keep his job. But since that was their first loss, say if they go the rest of this season, go undefeated, and then they lose to Ohio State, I don't think they fire him at that point. I mean, that's still, if you look at Michigan before Harbaugh got there, name me any of the success they had outside of Lloyd Carr. Nobody can really do so. So I'll say it's, as bad as Michigan and Michigan fans want to think it isn't as bad as what it was with Rich Rodriguez and other players like that.
Right. Well, some people say Bo Schembechler, but yeah, I get your point. That's going way back.
I remember that name.
Yeah, but yeah, I get it. I just think I've always thought that the wrong Harbaugh was getting more credit. The better Harbaugh is in Baltimore, in my opinion.
Right, man. That's true at this point. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, him and Tomlin going at it all the time. They can make mountains out of molehills. Certainly. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's got Superman at the quarterback, but they get injury after injury, and Baltimore is always there to really irritate me as a Steelers fan. But I give credit to what credit is doing. So I think John is a better coach, but we'll see. Mike, before you go, let people know how they can reach out to you and follow you, please. I know, like I said, you got about 15 jobs or so. So go ahead and list some of those, sir.
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at MikePatton82. You can find me touring the AFC South, which is on all listed platforms. Of course, you on Spotify, your Apple Podcasts. Go ahead, like, subscribe, Apple Podcasts. Of course, give me that 5-star rating and review. I'd appreciate that. But you can also find me on, of course, the Nashville Voice, Tennessee Tribune, and other different places. I'm still working on my site because, of course, unfortunately, there's a little maintenance going on, and yeah. But we'll get to work on that one and get things back up and running. Also, just for information, we didn't talk about Tennessee State. Tennessee State won their 4th in a row this weekend. They beat Murray State. It was 21-0 in the 4th quarter. Murray State came back. They ended up winning 27-21. Tennessee State did. They're 4th in a row, 5 of their last 6 games. They're in 2nd place in the OVC, and they're playing against UT Martin, which they're a team that's ranked in the top 25. in the 1AA ranks or the FCS ranks. But they play them this Saturday at UT Martin for the chance to be in first place in the OVC. If they win this game and win against Austin Peay, their last game, then they will win the Ohio Valley Conference in the first year of Eddie George being coach at Tennessee State.
That would be a beautiful thing. We know we're all cheering for that. That would be a super thing for Eddie George and that program and in the OVC if they can get that done. We hope and let's also, keep Coach Prime in our prayers. Still sick, and there's a lot of speculation and things that I don't really care about, but definitely if he's still not there, there's something going on. But I would wish him well as well, him and his family. But Mike, I appreciate you, man, as always, bro. Talk with you soon.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Mike Patton, always good to have him on T. And as he mentioned with Tennessee State, big ups. There's contrast and styles and flair, but both these guys are having successful years. Certainly, it's even more good, if you will, for Eddie George just walking into this thing, because Prime was there before with Jackson State, at least the year before. So with Eddie George walking in, this is something to build. That I think between him and Dawson Odoms at Norfolk State, talking about attendance and homecoming and things of that nature. They're used to a certain, type of program and with fans and alum. I think this bodes well for Tennessee State if they do win out and win the OVC.
I wonder what was Southern thinking when they, just as an aside, sort of makes you wonder what Southern was thinking when they let
go.
Yeah. Hey, that's another, that's one of those unanswered questions. And the scary thing with Eddie George is, usually that first year is always the toughest one, because you're just basically taking over from what the other person had before. But he's been able to do some stuff, and then next year he could probably be able to bring in some of his own kids. So, the future looks bright, and if they can sneak into the FCS playoffs along the way, that's even better.
They certainly have a shot to do so. That some things have to fall their way, sort of like Fayetteville State and where they are and winning out and that kind of thing. But even if they don't, this has been a really good year, especially if they finish the deal with this game and then with Austin Peay. I think it's great for Tennessee State and their fans. Speaking of CIAA, we had AD Drew on and Trevin, and they basically, that was on another program, and they were talking about the way at the D2 level, the mid-major level, whatever you want to call it, that there's a good possibility you can get 3 teams in the playoffs. You already got Albany State and Bowie State way up in the top 5 in the super region, and then as much as Bowie State, if you're a Bowie State fan, the overall picture of the conference is if Fayetteville State knocks him off, the committee's probably looking somewhat past the CIAA South, which is not really good, right? But they'll be champions, beating a team that's in that top 5 in the playoff hunt right now. What are your thoughts about if that happens, or do you think that it's probably only going to be Albany State and Bowie, especially if Bowie takes care of business?
Knowing how the Division II has always done the HBCUs, I'd be surprised if we got a third. I mean, it would be great to see it, but I think that they don't give them the same love like they do for basketball for whatever reason. And the thing is, the schools have, to their credit, they've bumped up their schedules over the years. But even with that being said, they still don't get that sort of respect from the at least on the football side of it. Basketball is a whole different story.
Yeah, Fayetteville State has a loss against a team that names escapes me right now. I was trying to pull up the info, but when you look up, their not just strength of schedule, but common opponents. I think that team that escapes me has a slightly better record, and they're PWI. To your point about how they do the HBCUs, so I think that may hurt them. But I still think that they have an outside shot if they can beat Bowie State and beat them convincingly too, and then have some of those other teams that are in those regions that are in the top 5 or so, top 6 lose. Then you see them get in, but it doesn't seem like it matters. Like when you look at the FCS, you look at, for instance, Iowa's AD is leading the college football player series. He's the spokesperson. He's a chairman. And you better believe he's got a lot of influence on this thing. PWI and their 5 family, right? One of those, as opposed to I can't think of the director at the HBCU that's on the committee now. That it just seems like the NCAA, when it comes to us, they'll put people on, but they kind of push them out in terms of the actual influence they can have, not on their program getting into the playoffs, but some other HBCU program getting into the playoffs.
Well, the sad thing is that, and we see it even on the basketball level, where if they do get in, they usually play each other in the first round. So it's or either they have them, they automatically make them the lower seed. Now, to their credit, Bowie has been able to host a couple of games over the years. So it's a sort of thing where you have to, you sort of go back to what Mike said. The more you win, I guess, the more, the more they'll give you a little bit more. But I would also think that the regular season should mean something as well.
Well, the other part of it is you hit it on the head too, Tony, because if Fayetteville State gets in, they have 3. They'll probably see Bowie State again. And or none of those teams, including Albany State, will host a game. That to me, I bet you it's gonna, if Fayetteville State makes the 3rd team, it's gonna be one of those 2 scenarios, or even both. They're gonna wind up playing Bowie State again, which means one of them won't be able to be home. One of them will, but they playing each other so they can knock another Negro team out, or all 3 of them won't host a football game in that first round of the playoffs.
I think Bowie will, because they've hosted. See, the one thing is, if you've hosted before, they're usually good about giving you another one, because now they've hosted a couple times. So I think if Bowie, now I'm not sure where they're at in the top 5. I think they're like 3 or 4 or something like that in the regional rankings. And I believe, if I'm correct, the first 4 get in, they automatically will host a game. So I think Bowie will host. It might be a little tougher for Albany. And the thing is, I think Albany's facilities are hurting them too, because I think you have to seat a certain amount. Bowie has the facilities to host it. Albany, they don't.
Yeah, you're right. And that's the other problem, which goes back to another issue about facilities and upgrading, not just T for playoff purposes, but attracting kids to programs, the weight room, the track and field, and the football field, and that kind of thing. It does play, like it or not, people, does play into decisions that some of these kids do make. Speaking of the decisions, T, this has really been a good baseball series, and we're both rooting for Dusty to get his thing. He's already a Hall of Famer, we know, but just to get it, just to add that, icing on.
Leave no doubt, basically.
Right, leave no doubt. And it's been a good series, but it's one thing. This is a reason why, in most cases, not even just I ain't even talk about Joe Buck, but even after the game now, I'm getting a little irritated with these announcers. John Smoltz hasn't done it. John Smoltz, by the way, is one of the best. He's really good. I tune out Joe Buck and I listen to John Smoltz because he know what the hell he's talking about. But I'm saying all this because they are just highlighting these kids, and I know why. So I know what you're going to say, but they're highlighting these kids for going 2 innings, 2 1/3, and getting guys out, and even like with the Braves, where you got some of their guys have been lights out all year, and they're doing it again, and they're coming in, and they're getting one guy, and everybody's pumped up. I get the fans being pumped up, but I heard Tom Glavine talk about this. He said, you know what? These kids, they go 5 innings or 4 1/3, and they're told that was a great outing. That's a problem for me. He said, however, Nolan Riley and them used to say that about us. We go 7, and then here comes the setup guy, then the closer, and we were soft. So he says it really kind of goes by generations. Do you buy into that, or are they continuing to regress in the way they handle these kids, where they nobody is pitching 200 innings anymore, and that was Glavine's.
I don't know. I don't like the modern. I don't like the way 6 innings is considered a quality start.
6.
No, yeah. Well, I'm talking about regular season.
Right.
I'm talking about regular season. Postseason is a whole different Megillah, which we can do 2 hours on that alone. But yeah, I wouldn't, and again, I lean more toward what Nolan and Tom Seaver and Bob Gibson and those guys, because you're paid to go 9. And again, at the risk of sounding like the old guy in the barbershop, those guys, they didn't have, there wasn't like a Tommy John surgery. There wasn't an emphasis on the bullpen. And look, I get it. I understand why, but I think, to me, that hurts the game more than anything else. The constant, look, I get the lefty righty stuff, but in some instances, it's almost like you're making moves just for the sake of making moves. And I think 9 times out of 10, one of the reasons why some of the better teams may not have won is because they've outmaneuvered themselves out of winning. I mean, I'll it's like beating a dead horse, but I will use Game 6 of last year, and quite frankly, I don't think Snell's recovered. Quite honestly, because it's what got me about that was that you make that move. It was like he was treating Game 6 of the World Series like it's the middle game of a 3-game series in Oakland.
How are you going to be riding your bike and doing tricks and no hands if your parents say, okay, you can ride for 10 minutes and then stop, and you don't learn to pedal back? I mean, anything, roller skating, whatever. How are you going to get good at it if you don't get the reps in, and they just coddling these guys? And Glavine was saying it's not necessarily the guy's fault; it's baseball's fault. The manager, it's
the analytics. It's strictly analytics, and emphasis on anal, because pitchers pitch. That's the thing. I get the whole. I take it back. I try to get the whole thing of specialization, but I think it's too much. I just really think it's too much because it shouldn't come. My thinking is look at some of the dominant performances in postseason history, just from latter day. Hershiser in '88, Bumgardner in 2014, 2015. Gibson back in the day. It's the thing is, it still comes back to the starting pitchers. They've devalued the starting pitcher like they've devalued running backs in the NFL, and it's not for the good. It's crazy that people aren't giving, even with the trade today, people aren't giving King Henry his due, because as far as I'm concerned, if he doesn't come back, Tennessee might as well get ready for the draft.
Right.
Now, AP is going to be okay as a so they can get till he comes back, but they're a whole different team if he's not back there. And I know there's going to be people that say, well, he's just that one guy. He's the one guy that they're allowing to do it. I think there are other dominant running backs in the league, but because everybody and their mama wants to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game, we don't see it.
That's what we were talking about, Mike and I, before you came on, and the fact that it's a pass-driven league. And I don't, I asked Mike, is Tennessee ready to be able to throw the ball a little bit more, because they haven't been doing it. I mean, to their credit, but of course they have, King Henry in the back, so they didn't have to. But are they, they're going to have to still be who they are. They're just not going to be as dominant, but they're still going to have to run the football. That's who they are.
Whose way? All these folks that been alibiing for Tannehill, you really ready to hand them the keys now?
No, you don't want that.
I'll wait. No. I'll wait. Again, they keep telling us, oh, he's been fine. He's done a little bit better than what we're giving him credit for. Okay, let me see the next month. See you in a month.
And
see you in a month.
Just to go back to the baseball stuff, position players don't stop taking batting practice, or they limit their batting practice unless they're totally hurt. And if they're hurt, they're not going to bat anyway. So it's all about the pitchers. It really is. And it's this mentality of something may happen. Well, you can walk out your house and something can happen. Like, accidents happen. That's just a part of the game. If you're going to coddle these guys, to me, it just takes away.
And see, it's not so much. It's not so much coddling. It's, again, you're being a slave to the analytics. Because I think if you ask these, I think if you get these guys in a private moment, hell yeah, I want to go 9. But everything's about the analytics now. And
I think though too, T, it's an offensive minded thing. I don't think baseball wants Randy Johnson striking out 15 in 9 innings, or Ryan or somebody. I don't think they really want that. I think they want guys going short innings so they can be hitting the ball all over the place. They don't want 2-1 in the World Series. They don't.
Well. See, here's the thing: the last full season before last year's cannonball run, so to speak. It was the first year where there were more strikeouts than hits. And, you got to go back to the summer of '68 with, where you had, Denny McClean winning the 30 games. And of course, Gibson doing his thing. And of course, they lowered them out the next year. They can, there can be a balance. Yeah, we know folks like the long ball, but you know what? There's a lot of us that like watching a good pitching matchup as well.
I don't really care. I just want my team to win. So if it's 8,
but I think.
So to your point, I'm saying I don't. I can watch 2-1 every game in the World Series as long as my Yankees are winning. So I don't really care. I just want to win. So if it's 2-1 and 1-0, if we win, I'll take it.
Sure.
You know.
But it's look, baseball's got a lot of all I'm saying, right now, to be quite honest with you, enjoy hopefully these next two games, because it may be another while before we see some more. Unfortunately, that's the Damocles sword that's holding over that's hanging over the next possibly one or two games after tomorrow.
Just joining us, we're talking with Tony T. Mac McClean, the editor-in-chief of Black Athlete Sports Newsroom on the BASN News Radio Show. T, speaking of the two games, the one thing about the Astros I've noticed, even in the the cheating and all that kind of stuff, but the one thing about them with Correa and all these guys is that, man, it's especially it's the World Series, they see your guys and your bullpen. That's why Atlanta really needs to get some long innings out of some of their starters, but they see that bullpen a few times, then they smell blood in the water. And if I'm a Braves fan, I'm concerned about that. When they see that lineup, when they see those relievers two or three times in the series after that, they did it in Boston, they've done it in the past, then all of a sudden the hit parade is on. And and let's give credit to Dusty Baker telling his team this is how this lineup's going to be for Game 5. Making those changes, and of course he had the Midas touch,
and it worked for the two guys that he flopped, because they both hit. But see, here's the thing: if you're still playing the whole they cheated thing, how'd they cheat coming back from a 4-0 deficit yesterday? How'd they cheat when their bullpen is doing this on the road? So it gets old. It gets really, 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 really old, because, and again, maybe we're a little biased because we want to see Dusty win, but even if you don't like him, if your whole thing, if you're still saying that they're cheating, you're just ignorant now. You're just ignorant now, because they're not cheaters. Right. They're still doing the same things. They're doing it on the road. Like you said, that Boston series was basically, when Boston went up 2-1, that series was like, okay, let's just, let's take it to the next level. And they basically outscored them all the way. Now, Boston gets one hit in the most crucial game of the year. How many garbage cans does it take to do that?
Right. And it's no good. People don't use common sense. Houston's got the microscope on them. You really think they want to cheat now or going to try? If everybody, the world is watching, that's a common sense thought right there. Like, why would they even try to do that now if everybody's talking about cheating?
Everybody and their mama's looking at them right now. Right. The worst thing, the dumbest thing they could do now is to do that. But again, we'll see. We'll see how they react tomorrow night. But again, at some point, not having Charlie Morton is going to come back to haunt the Braves, and it may have already started already, because now I hope they put a legit pitcher out there tomorrow night and stop this whole opener thing, because the opener the opener is like prevent defense. It prevents you from winning.
Right. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Morton was supposed to pitch Game 5, and I think if he pitched, they were going
to come back with him. Yeah, they were going to come back with him in Game 5, or either Game 6. Because wait, he was going to be the guy that was going to pitch either 1-4 or 1-5. So, right. So yeah, now they've got to know.
That's huge for them. Let me ask you this: with regardless of who wins, there's two players that are glaring in terms of if they will be back. One, some people say, is Hall of Famer. I think, borderline. And the other one, if he keeps going the way he is, certainly will be. That's Correa with Houston. And and Freddie Franchise with Atlanta. Do you think they both will be back with their teams?
I think Freeman will stay. I don't. I think Correa's bags are already packed.
Oh man! Wow.
And personally, if he's willing to play third, he'd look good in blue and orange. That's all I'll say.
Listen, that would be a. You don't let Correa go. I'm sorry.
Well, remember they let Springer walk. To their credit, they've been consistent with this. They let Springer walk without even. I don't even think Springer got a qualifying offer. I think they'll probably give Correa a qualifying. The thing is, they don't want to. They're looking long term and see. The thing that people have been sleeping on with Houston is that they've got a great farm system. I mean, you look at Alvarez. You look at Tucker, you look at Siri, all those are homegrown guys. And they still got a bunch of them down there. But I tell you, letting Correa go it's
how many of those guys come through your system? The system or not? How many guys come through like that? I'm opening up
to their credit, they've had a bunch of them. I mean, that whole pitching staff, but the bulk of their pitching staff, homegrown, and everyday guys. Alvarez is a beast, Tucker is a beast as well, and they still got a couple left. But it's a gamble. It's a gamble because he's going to make some bucks. But see, not to throw wet water on everything, but everything's relative until the CBA gets squared away. Still there?
Yeah, I do apologize on that. I was saying I think they both stay, and with Freeman, I think that they don't want to upset their base, and they keep him, what he's meant to that program there. And if he does walk, then you're probably going to have 3 or 4 teams looking at him as well.
Oh, sure. Look, I think he's a Hall of Famer personally. If he gets the ring, I think it definitely puts him over because he's had an MVP, he's been a perennial All-Star, he's won a batting title, he'll have a World Series. I think
he's a career over 300, right? Am I not mistaken?
Either that or high 280s. Right. And see the thing with him and with every player like him is always going to be compared to Chipper Jones.
And Chipper loves him too, by the way. Chipper loves him.
Yeah. And see, here's the thing. They already have the heir apparent with Riley and Swanson. And remember and the elephant in the room, they get Acuna back next year. I mean, by all rights, this series might have already been over if Acuna is healthy.
Right. And I just, like I said, I mean, from the excitement standpoint, like we said, we want. I definitely want it to go 7. It's been the 12 of us that have been watching. It's been a good series.
Yeah. The other final question for you is, when you look at, I know the kid with the Angels is getting all the accolades, but who's your MVP in both leagues? Who's your Cy Young?
I give it to Vlad in the AL.
Thank you.
I'm going to say Crawford in the National League. I'm going to go with Crawford.
Okay.
Cy Young. As much as I would like to give it, as much as I think the kid in LA, Arias deserves some more, you almost can't ignore Barnes in Milwaukee. just the fact that he was just so dominant. Now, of course, he got blown away in the playoffs. Now, in the American League, I gotta think about it with the American League Cy Young.
Yeah, I don't think anybody had, and it's not that it's my only criteria, but I don't think anybody had over 13 wins in the American League this year. But that also goes back to this whole, all right, we're gonna pitch 4 innings and 5 innings and 6 innings, and then guys coming in blowing leads and setup guys or middleman and whatever you want to call them. And so, Cy Young, the Cy Young to me, the whole pitching aspect to me has been watered down because of that.
When I heard them say, winning 20 games doesn't mean anything to me, you lost me right there.
Right.
You lost me right there, because it's again, the thing about analytics is you're chasing numbers instead of looking at what's done on. I mean, yes, numbers are a part of it, but you can't make it all about numbers. That's the problem. Look, when I started watching baseball, yeah, I was into the numbers, but you also realize as you get a little bit older, at least this I'm just talking for myself here, it's more to it than that. But see, that's how everything is done. And unfortunately, what plays into this also is this whole fantasy sports aspect, where that is seeped into the evaluation of players. I will never forget about 3-4 years ago, and this was probably the last time I watched an NFL pregame, an analyst basically said, because this guy doesn't put together good fantasy numbers, he's not a good quarterback. And I'm waiting for somebody to slap the taste out of his mouth for saying that, but they didn't.
You remember the year, I think it was Zach Greinke. He was like 7. Well, hear me out.
Well, he was 12-7, and he had like a 2 ERA, and they were like, "Oh, he was dominant," and I'm like,
"No, it wasn't. Either it wasn't him or that year, but it was a top-notch pitcher, or a pitcher had been in the league for. He was 7-13, but he had pitched like 230 something.
King Felix.
Yeah,
King Felix.
Right. He had, but see, that's the perfect example. You don't know if that. You got to look at how many runs they're scoring for him. Sure, he had a losing record, but guess what? He was out there every game. 235 innings, I think he pitched that year. Which again, whoa, somebody pitched 235, and that's like, And so you have to look at the numbers to see. Just because he was under 500 doesn't mean he went out there and didn't pitch well. I think his ERA was around 4 or whatever. Well, but again, he's not getting run support.
Well, and then the ultimate was when they basically DeGrom's second Cy Young to me was bogus. I mean, he's a great pitcher and all of that, but the whole excuse of, oh, you didn't get this run support. And the first thing I'm saying to you is go back to 1972 when Steve Carlton won 27 games for a 59 wins Phillies team.
That's almost 50%.
That's what I'm saying. See, you've got to have and again, the old man in the mountain, the old man at the barbershop, but I'm old, I remember Gibson's season. I mean, put it this way, 2 greatest seasons I've ever seen was Doc 24-4 in 85. That's dominance. He won the Triple Crown and he had most wins, most strikeouts, lowest ERA. Hands down, greatest pitcher that season. Gibson, the year that he went 22-9, 1.12 ERA. No one will get 1.12 ever again in modern time. And see, I'll even go, I'll even take it back further. The 71 Orioles with the 420 game winner. We'll never see that again either, probably.
Right.
But here's the thing: the quote unquote stiff of the staff had 10 complete games. I don't think you had 10 complete games in combined major leagues this year in the regular season.
Nope. I think the
So-
most that someone got was 2, and that was Cole, Jared Cole, and somebody else.
And he had to threaten to kill Boone's family for him to be out there in the 9th inning.
Exactly. Yep. And you I mean, you're not you're not alone. I look at it, and they're just going on so many, and boy, this
You got to, it's still
like with this pitching staff, 2 1/3 innings.
I've even put it this way. I notoriously keep the sound down for a lot of the games, and as much as I love MLB Tonight and MLB Network, I sort of stay away from it this time of the year, especially during the World Series, because they basically do all day analyzing up until the game, and then all night and overnight analyzing till the next day, and it becomes too much. It just becomes way too much. So I watch now because of the cable system, or I guess the IPCs I have. I'll go to I guess it's Bally's Sports South for the Braves, for their home wing, and for Houston, it's AT&T Southeast or Southwest or what have you, because they cover the team every day, all day. I'm going to listen to them. Now, yes, because it's MLB Network, they're going to cover it on a national basis, and they will focus on whatever. But it's almost this time of the year, it almost becomes too much analysis, too much analysis.
I stopped watching their game of the week too when Bob Costa started doing it, and
I watched the game again. The mute button is my friend, as far as I'm concerned. I still like watching the game, but I have no problem watching it with the sound down or with it on mute, because they're not 9 times out of 10 they're not really telling you much more than what you're already seeing. I mean, if a guy gets hurt or what have you, but this time of the year everything's flashed on the screen anyway.
Right.
So,
and I'm not just saying it because he's a brother and I liked him as a player, but Harold Reynolds is the only one that could break down the game the way I like it, in terms of the the post game and the pre-game, and he can break down the hitters. He's know what, why did so and so do this when he had a lefty, and he'll break it down. Mark DeRosa on the day, he was so brave today. I mean, yesterday it was just so ridiculous. And
I actually like Big Papi, A-Rod, and Jay Hurt.
Yeah,
I like the 3 of them. I'll tolerate Kevin. I forget, it's terrible. I forget the guy's name, and he was at SNY for so long. Oh, Kevin Burkhardt. Kevin Burkhardt's okay. He's sort of like he's basically the baseball equivalent of Ernie Johnson on that thing. But yeah, if I'm gonna listen, I'd rather listen to ex-players, and yes, there are going to be some ex-players that may have or whatever, but I would much rather listen to them than, for lack of a better word, I'll call them out. Brian Kenny can't shut up enough, as far as I'm concerned, because he's totally analytics, totally about whatever. And he comes off as, especially when he's with another former player, that he knows more than the other player.
right.
And I'm sorry, I'm not listening to him. I'm going to listen to the guy that's actually been in a batter's box or on a pitcher's mound on an occasion.
Yeah, I know a lot of times for me it's a New York thing. I can't listen to Michael Kay. I don't like Boomer Size, and I don't like any of they. They're so pompous, so arrogant.
That's again. That's why to me, look, the only unless they're doing the show in my room, I don't do pre and post games anymore. I just don't. I watch the games.
Well,
I watch the game.
if they doing it in your room, that'd be worse because you'd be ready to punch them in the face. I know I would if
No,
I had
no, no, wouldn't be. We mean ready. I'll have my Buford Pusser special on the side.
Yeah,
It's
you're right.
it's too bad. And full disclosure, I was one of those guys that would watch pre and post game shows till my ears bleed. But after a while, it becomes a thing of it seems like it's more of a frat boy thing than it is about giving information. Everybody has their little shtick. Everybody has their whatevers. Paul Pierce, had a hard on for LeBron all these years, and what's so sad is it seeped over into his analysts phase.
Right.
So there's just some folks that you just can't listen to. Rick Perkins is the same way. It's just too much.
Right.
It's way too much.
And I think you hit it on the head for me, is that these guys who play Frisbee in college want to tell these former athletes things that, like they know the game, the Joe Bucks and all these guys, like I said, the Michael Kays and stuff. They're always talking over these guys, and they ain't never played a down or a inning in anybody's game. But they're quick to tell you. Stephen A. the same way, telling people, no way AJ Green should have not turned his head in that Arizona game. Meanwhile, you got to receive a Michael Irvin saying, wait a minute, this happened because this, that. And, when you look at it, no, there's no way. I mean, shut up. For real.
No, like I said, you have to. I've stopped trying to be the Dr. Phil of sports. If you're still watching the games and you're listening to anything and everything these guys are saying, you're on your own.
Right. Good point. Well, we'll see. Hopefully, at the time of this broadcast, it'll be in a couple of days. We'll be talking about a winner of the World Series, and hopefully, we'll be talking about Dusty Baker, manager of the world champion Houston Astros. T, I appreciate your time, man. Enjoy, and I'll talk with you soon, sir.
Take care.
Thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
Tony T. McClean. If you missed any part of the broadcast, make sure you go to our website, theBatchelorNews.airtime.pro. You can hear the audio of this. And if you want to watch the video of this, you can certainly go to Big Mind Entertainment, download that app on Amazon, Roku, or Fire Stick, and you'll see the Batchelor News radio show there. If you're interested in advertising with us, if you're interested in having your own show, shoot me an email at labachelor40@gmail.com, labachelor40@gmail.com. And if you want to donate and be a part of this, shoot me an email at the same place, labachelor40@gmail.com. Enjoy. Talk with you soon. Remember, if you miss any part of the broadcast, go to our website, theBatchelorNews.airtime.pro. You can listen to the rebroadcast of this show and others. And if you want to watch it, go to Big Mind Entertainment on Amazon, Fire Stick, or Roku, and download the Big Mind Entertainment app. And you can watch the show or shows in its entirety. If you're interested in advertising with us or having your own show, if you want to donate and be a partner, email us at labachelor40@gmail.com.